Hello my dear friends, so 1x and 2x on road bicycles. On mountain bicycles it's quite common now to have just one chainring at the front, and it makes perfect sense. It's lighter, easier to operate, simpler. On the road it's mostly still traditional, mostly two chain rings at the front. However, more and more people want to upgrade or to change. Don't know if it's upgrade exactly or downgrade. Anyway, people want to change to 1x on a road. It usually doesn't come as a default option. It's I think, very hard to find a bicycle, road bicycle, which is equipped with just one chainring at the front, including mine. Mine had just a standard semi-compact system at the front with two chain rings. However, I've decided to upgrade it to 1x. So why did I decide to do it? Really a bit of specific reasons, a bit of odd reasons as well. I'm very concerned about any noises that bicycle makes, and they irritate me as well. And for troubleshooting, mechanical troubleshooting, sometimes it's very hard to understand where the noise is coming from, if it's serious or not, should you be concerned or not. And maybe it's just me, but I could never set up the front derailleur in a way that the chain never rubs or never touches the derailleur cage. So there was always a little bit of noise on some gears, in some positions, even without cross chaining. There was some noise there. So I decided if I just eliminate that thing altogether, the system will become a little bit quieter. Also, it's a little bit simpler. Maybe it's just me as well, but I think it's just a little bit simpler to change the gears going up and down the cassette, and not to be concerned about cross chaining, about the fact that you need to be on the big chainring at the front and the small one at the back, and vice versa. If you are at the big chainring at the back, you need to be at the small chainring at the front, so you need to keep that in mind. For me it was just a little bit hard sometimes to keep track of that as well. It was distracting me from other things on the road, so I didn't really like that. Plus, I'm not really a weight weenie, but if anything makes the system a little bit lighter, I'm always up for that, especially at no other expense. You're not compromising structural integrity or convenience or anything else really there. It's just there. 1x system is simply lighter because there's no second chain ring, there's no shifter cable, etc., etc. Only a little bit lighter, yes, but it's there. So that's another thing to consider. Because of all of those factors, I decided, okay, I'll try the 1x system. Now, I was unfortunate enough to have an FSA, or full speed ahead, crank system on this bicycle, which is Boardman. It's called SL-K Light Hollow Carbon Rod System. SL-K Light. It's a carbon crank system. Now, as you can see, it's 4 arms, and those 4 arms, unfortunately, are not, they're asymmetric, as you can see, so not equal distance between those arms, and it's not the same as a Shimano asymmetric system. So you cannot just go ahead and purchase a Shimano 1x chainring and just put it on there, which is very unfortunate, because then you have to stick to the chain rings which are manufactured by FSA, which are A, hard to find, and B, they are way overpriced in my opinion. However, yes, if you're unfortunate enough to be on FSA system, that's the way to go. I haven't found any aftermarket 1x chain rings for FSA. So I used to have those two chain rings, 50, a big 50 teeth one at the front and a little 34 one there as well. They were alright, I guess, but as I said, chain rub, and another problem that I had was chain drops. This is actually funny because it had derailleur cage there to keep the chain in place. It had a chain catcher attached to the front derailleur as well, but still there were some chain drops towards the frame, which is very unpleasant and sometimes even dangerous when it happens. And usually it's the problem of a 1x system. However, I had this problem on a 2x and never had it after converting to 1x. Now I've listed all of the pros of the 1x system. Now what are the cons? The chain drops, people talk about chain drops. This is why the 1x chainring is very different from the big 2x chainring. It's not designed in a way for chain to be moved off and on it. So this is why there's a narrow wide system there. One tooth is a bit wider, another tooth is a little bit narrower, just to keep the chain in place, and also teeth are higher. People say that because of those higher teeth, there's a little bit of power to lose there. I don't know how much exactly it will be, not a lot obviously, just maybe 1 or 2 watts, maybe a little bit more than that. I'm not too concerned about that. Now, when I decided to buy this 1x chainring by FSA, there's really little information on the internet, and I had a bit of a concern about chain line there. So when you take off those 2 chain rings, now the single chain ring of a 1x system, where will it be in relation to the cassette at the back? What the chain line will look like? Will it be moved towards the little cogs at the back of the cassette? Will it be moved towards the big ones? Will it be in the middle? Even the seller who sold me this 1x chain ring produced by FSA, they couldn't tell me, and they thought it's a bit of a concern there, and the chain line now will be bad because instead of this simple flat front chain ring, I'll have exactly the same narrow wide flat chain ring, and now my chain line will effectively move towards the smaller cogs of the cassette. Now, skipping ahead, this is not the case. The way it's done is A, you can still use the same bolts of the FSA system because there are some plastic spaces to replace this small chain ring at the back. So this is very good, same bolts you can use, and also the chain ring itself, it's actually a bit offset, so it's not as flat as this one. It's actually moved inside towards the center of the crankset system and effectively towards the center of the cassette. So it's just an ideal chain line, to be honest. So I was very happy about that. This is just the way manufacturer FSA created this chainring. Another thing I was worried about with one buy is chain drops. Now I'm still using the old Dura Ace rear derailleur. It's a 9000 model, which is not designed to work with one buy really. So it doesn't have that system like the mountain bike and the current gravel derailleurs have to keep it in place. This little flag there, it's not present in this system. So I thought, oh, it may be a problem with the chain drops, because it just moves a little bit more and there is no way to limit that movement. So maybe I'll need some kind of a chain catcher or some other device to keep the chain in place, which are actually very easy to install. They're cheap, they are available, but I don't need any of that, to be honest. The chain just stays there no matter what, even if the rod is a little bit rough, no problems at all. So I'm very happy about that. And also the cassette, originally I had just a standard rod 11 to 28 cassette, which is it might be a little bit hard on really steep uphills, so I thought I may have a problem with that, but it's still doable, I guess, even with 1128. And Shimano also specifies that their 9000 derailleur only works with biggest chain ring over 28 teeth on the cassette, so you cannot really upgrade it theoretically if you stick to manufacturer's recommendation. However, many people on the internet say that you can easily stick a 30 teeth cassette there, or even 32, which I've decided to try. So I purchased an 11 to 32 cassette, works just fine, works perfectly, no issues at all. I understand that there's a little bit of a risk involved, however it just works perfectly. It's up to you whether you want to do it or not. I've made my choice, I've installed a bigger cassette. Now even steeper uphills aren't really a problem. The system works fantastically. Now, as I said, you're only limited with FSA to FSA chain rings. They're overpriced, they're not easily available, unfortunately, but for me it was just a little bit easier to still stick to that rather than replace the whole crankset altogether. So the seller, the only seller that I could find online which had those chain rings, unfortunately didn't have the 44 teeth. I was aiming towards the 44 teeth narrow wide 1 by chainring by FSA, just because I mostly ride on flats, and I thought if I'm going downhill, you know, to be just a little bit fast, that will probably work a little bit better for me, but unfortunately it wasn't available, so I had to settle with the 42 teeth instead, which I now don't regret, to be honest, because there are lots of calculators available online where you can calculate, okay, if you have 11 tooth cassette, when will you spin out, what your maximum speed will be like, and it's something like 50 plus when you will spin out, so not really an issue unless you're doing lots of downhill or something like that. So I'm quite happy with that 42 teeth chain ring. It's good, it's a little bit easier uphill as well, so because there's only one, works actually good regardless of whether you go 44 or 42. You just need to take into account how many uphills do you do, how important it is for you to go really fast downhill. Whether it's important for you or not, it's not for me. That's why 42 teeth is just perfect. It's probably even better than 44, so I don't regret it. Now, if you have any other questions about switching to one buy on the road, FSA systems in particular, I can certainly answer this in comments or just make another video. But just to summarize, it's a nice, technically it's not an upgrade, I wouldn't call it an upgrade. It's a nice switch which you can do on the road, which does work very well for me personally and for other people as well. I don't really see any downsides. Actually, one thing I would like to mention just before we finish is, okay, you've removed your front derailleur, you've removed all of the cables. What do you do with those holes in your frame? That's another thing which is really hard to find on the internet, surprisingly. I found some recommendations to use Sugru. Sugru is a moldable adhesive, which you open it up, you squash it with your fingers for a couple of minutes, then it becomes hard rubber, maintaining its shape after about half an hour after it's exposed to air and moisture. So I've bought that. It's quite expensive, to be honest, for what it is, I think, and I wouldn't recommend it, no. Well, it's very easy to mold, I get it. That's why it may look nice. However, if you want to remove it, it may damage the paint. Keep that in mind, because it's not just a sealant, it's an adhesive. It's a glue, basically, so you need to keep that in mind. It may damage your paintwork. Well, you can see my ugly work here. Just stick a little bit of Sugru there. It works fine, I guess. Looks fine as well. It's light, not heavy, but what I would recommend you do instead is probably just grab some silicone sealant. I understand it's a bit sticky. So to work with that, there are two hacks which you can use. One is you can use a little bit of water and lots of dishwasher liquid in that water, and then just drop a little bit of that sealant into that water with dishwasher liquid. And this way, when you keep your hands moist in the dishwasher liquid, it's not as sticky. It becomes sort of moldable. You can mold it to a little round shape and just stick it to your frame. And it's cheap as dirt, you know, silicone sealant. It's a bit harder to work with, yeah, I get it, but will look fine in the end. If it doesn't look fine, just remove it. Probably it wouldn't damage anything, most likely. And then just stick another one in, no problems there. Or another way which you can make it a little bit easier is people use cornstarch inside of the silicone sealant as well. Then it becomes moldable as well, not as sticky. And also you can even make a thick shape out of the silicone sealant, and it will all be hard in the end. So, two hacks of how to cover your holes on a bicycle. Of course, you can just use simple bolts and stick them in, but if you for some reason don't like that option, silicone sealant is always there. You can always use sticky tape as well, but I wouldn't recommend that. I think it's a bit messy, looks a bit ugly, so, but it's up to you. Plenty of ways. You can try some rubber grommets, but it's very hard to find the right shape and size, so would be good, but really hard to find them in the right shape. So that's it. As I say, if you have any questions or comments, just write them down below. Thank you. Bye.